Welcome to the Power of Your Voice podcast with your host, Johnny Gorky. You have the power to overcome challenges and fears. Let my voice and the voice of many others show you how to transform these challenges into opportunities. To learn more about future podcasts and read episode show notes, check out my website at www.thepowerofyourvoice.com.
Welcome to another episode of the Power of Your Voice podcast. This is episode 27. This is a very empowering interview with Ty Clark, who's a musician, a published writer, film editor, music director, an artist, and addict. Ty Clark is a voice for substance abuse and criminal justice reform. During this episode, Ty will share his story about drug addiction, how he got help, how you or anyone you know can get help, and what you should never do for a loved one who is suffering from addiction. Ty Clark is not a CEO, he's not a motivational speaker, and he's not selling anything. He's one person who, after 9 solid years of opiate addiction, has got his life back. It was by far the hardest battle he has faced, but he faced it and is happy to share with you his story. He has built a beautiful, loving home with his fiancée of 6 years in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, hey, Ty, welcome to the Power of Your Voice podcast. I'm so glad to have you on here today. Let's dive in deep into the juicy stuff. So you are a musician, a publisher, a writer, music video director, a film editor, and a voice in substance abuse and prison reform. So back in 2001, something happened to you at work and it changed your life. What exactly happened to you?
Yeah, so I was fresh out of high school. I've always been a very ambitious person, but just out of high school, I was trying to get the band I was in at the time off the ground. And while I was doing that, I was working at a machine shop in Tulsa, and they were giant bullet-making World War II drill presses. They were like 9-10 feet tall, and I'd been there about a year. And I had a string on my jacket that caught the drill and basically wrapped my arm into the drill press. And if you think about how a drill works and you think about your hand wrapping around it and then the rest of your arm going with it, it basically compound fractured all 3 bones in my left arm. It was a very traumatic injury. It was a very, very painful to say the least. But that there was a level of trauma that happened with that, as well as being a drummer. You know, everything was just grind to a screeching halt at this point. So that happened, and I can literally, even on paper, trace back from when that began my downslide in life. That injury was basically the precursor to my addictions that came. Of course, you know, with that kind of injury, there's a lot of opiate pain medication initially administered, but then through the recovery process, it was just, constant. And it was, while it was necessary at the time, I'm a 20-year-old young man who's basically just being processed through this orthopedic situation in a way where it's just like, are you in pain? Yes, here's a bunch of pain medicine for an extended period of time. And this is at the height of when OxyContin hit the market and it was advertised and marketed to doctors in such a way that, you know, they said it was very unaddictive. And basically there was not a lot of oversight on me personally or anyone else with the pain medications. They just wrote them, give them to them. And it was not hard in the years after that to go into any doctor and have them write a high-powered Schedule 3, Schedule 2 narcotic because of all of the hardware that was in my arm.
That's insane. So what, after the injury, what happened? Like, how were you not able, did you go to like physical therapy, all that kind of stuff? You were in extreme pain, and how much opiates were the doctors giving you exactly?
Well, like I said, this was the beginning of the OxyContin era, as a lot of us kind of see this time. So yeah, there was physical therapy and some other things and involved with the recovery of the injury, but I remember the surgeon at one point showing his work off to an upcoming surgeon, and I remember just feeling like I wasn't very. I felt like a piece of meat, like he was an excellent surgeon. Don't get me wrong; he saved my arm, but I was very processed in a way that there wasn't. It was just like pain medicine, opiates. Here you go, and there just wasn't any thought of how do we make sure that this patient doesn't become very reliant on these medicines and actually has a full recovery.
So to go into that a little bit, maybe there might be somebody that's listened to this, maybe they got injured or something happened to them, or maybe someone in their family. What are some signs, like looking back, that maybe if you would have known at that time, maybe you would have said, hey, you know what, maybe I need to go to another doctor?
Well, being young and in your 20s and somewhat naive and being very depressed too, because the injury, it halted my career as a musician, because that's how I was going about life. And that injury literally put a stop to it. It was a temporary stop, but in my mind, it was a total stop. And also there was workman's comp stuff going on that kept me with the surgeon who, because it was an emergency, the surgeon who did the surgery was my doctor. I'm not implying that doctor was at fault. What I'm really trying to get at is that basically that injury and the influx of strong opiate medications, the mental state of myself after such an injury could have been dealt with a little more care, but it just wasn't. I don't know if the system's even designed to do that anymore, to be more conscious of the addictive aspect to these medications. I think it has improved, but at the time in early 2000s, it was just he's hurt, give him anything he needs, And I was naive to what I was taking at the time. I found out later, because going to school and just studying about what I put in my body, I quickly learned how opiates affect the brain, but it didn't matter at that point. You can know all you want to know about the chemistry of addiction, but when you are addicted, it does not matter.
Yeah, that's scary, because we met on Instagram, and it's like, I remember probably about 2 weeks ago, I was reading a big article. There's a big lawsuit going on with the issues that we have in this country, and it's like they said in the article I want to say it's like 73 billion pills or something. Don't quote me on it. It's a lot. But they said for every human being in the United States, adult and child, in the year, they've prescribed, it's like 23 opiate pills to every single person. And that's a lot when you really think about it. And it's like, are all the doctors even aware how addicting this is to people? Are they really explaining this to people? Like, just for example, my father-in-law, he's a medical doctor, and he got injured, not to your degree, but his doctor prescribed him. And when I asked him, I think he gave him like maybe 25 pills. And he's like, I'll be honest with you, I took like 2, because he knows how addicting it is. And just like you said, you can know all the chemistry, you can have a PhD, it doesn't really matter. When you're addicted to it, you're addicted, and there's really nothing you can do except for going through the withdrawals and the recovery and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, the statistics of opiate addiction. I'm from Oklahoma, and Oklahoma at one time was number 1 or 2. You'd have to verify the exact number on that, but literally a top leader in opiate-related deaths, opiate-related crimes, and overall addiction. And I think what sparked that, honestly, was greed. I think money talks so much that, you have a pharmaceutical rep who's wine and dining doctors 24 hours a day. Their job is to get doctors to prescribe this medication. And Oklahoma is currently, they just settled a $234 million lawsuit against certain opiate manufacturers, in particular the ones who made OxyContin, brand name OxyContin. And they won that settlement based on being a public nuisance. They didn't have the general health and well-being of patients in mind. What they had in mind was the money. So that blinded, I think, in my view, it blinded a lot of doctors' decisions, because shortly after I got injured, Tulsa, Oklahoma was just 2005 to 2012, like it was just a mecca of pill mills and script writers. I mean, pain management doctors. I had 5 specific pain management doctors, one of which was arrested. He fled and wound up committing suicide. I had a doctor who got 36 felonies because every time the police would go to an overdose, they would find the prescription and see his name on there. And I'll reserve the name, but it just kept happening. People were dying left and right. And in my career as a drug addict, I can tell you that doctor gave me more drugs than you would ever believe. And it was just ridiculous. It was literally a ridiculous amount of narcotics. Even if I had full-blown cancer and was dying, it still would have been an enormous amount of narcotics.
Well, if you don't mind me asking you, Ty, where were you taking, like, one a day? How many would you say you were taking probably within a month?
I basically, it varied, but with this specific doctor, because the way it worked, you would see a doctor until he got popped by the police, and then you'd move on and try to find another one. And there were some doctors that I think were genuinely trying to be good people, but doctors like I'm referring to right now, the only thing that mattered was the money, and they would have so many patients coming in and out and just cash money all day long. And I was literally getting 140 milligram methadone, 60 oxycodone, and then random stuff for what they call breakthrough pain. Basically, it was an enormous amount of high caliber, very potent opiates.
Yeah, and the important thing for everybody that's listening to this episode right now is to know that you got this stuff legally. It's not like you were buying this stuff on the street. You were legally getting this stuff by doctors. I was reading something else a while ago too. It's like they said an average about 100,000 people die in America because of the opium epidemic that's going on. That's a lot of people, man.
It is. The giant pharmaceutical companies, and while it's easy to blame, big pharma or doctors and stuff, there is a level of personal responsibility that comes down. When you're nodding out at your family's Thanksgiving, when you cannot hold a job because you're literally so messed up you're falling asleep, there's an element of, you have to check yourself. You have to ask yourself, do I need to be taking this amount of medicine? And as addicts, what we do is we justify those things. We convince ourselves that we do. We convince ourselves that we do have a medical issue, whether you do or not. You justify the damage that you're doing to yourself, the relationships that you're involved with, family, friends, your work relationships. So I just want to make a comment on that yes, while pharmaceutical companies and doctors have a responsibility, so does the user. The user also has a responsibility to look in the mirror. And as addicts though, that's just not something that really registers to an active addict.
So when did you get to the point it's like, shit, man, I can't be like this anymore. I need to do something?
Honestly, several times. I started using in 2001, and it was till 2009. The last time I used was 2009. I went to prison, but we'll get there in a second. There were many times, so many terrible things happened in that 8-9 years that, I had 2 people die in front of me. It was just me and them. CPR, I gave them CPR, both of them. The irony of how closely related the deaths were very troubling. And you would think to an addict, or you would think to a person that if you woke up and found somebody dead in your floor, that would be a wake-up call, but to somebody like myself who was so consumed by addiction, what it did was it made me want to numb myself even more. And so that's what I did when these terrible things would happen, the deaths, the living on the streets, weird, awkward situations that could have been very dangerous. The way an addict like myself dealt with that was just take more drugs, just take more. It's very self-destructive behavior, and it kills people daily. But from my perspective, the psychology behind that, like they say in NA and AA, that, one is never enough, and there's never too many. And that's absolutely true. Like, you just need a little bit to get you through the day, but that hole that's inside is never filled by these substances. So basically, I had hit rock bottom multiple times, but it wasn't until I actually truly, wholeheartedly wanted to stop, because I had been in rehab 4 or 5 times. I had been arrested 3 times at this point. But it was when I made up in my mind, I am sick of this. I cannot do anything right at all. Everything I touch turns to shit. I cannot get my head above water in any way, shape, or form. When I made the decision, I'm so done with this, please help me. That's when real recovery and real change starts happening. It's when you decide it.
So would you say you pretty much had to hit rock bottom before you realized, man, I need change?
I myself have to learn everything the hard way. So I hit rock bottom multiple times. And it just, there was something that happened. I had throughout the course of my career as a drug addict, so many bad things had happened. And I had got some charges. I wasn't working because I was getting enough medication that I could scrape by with selling extras or selling some, and everybody I was around was a drug addict. Like, what's the people that I surrounded myself with were the same kind of person I was, just complete drug addicts. And that, looking around one day and kind of realizing that I was just like, we're just all a bunch of junkies, and I have so much more to offer, and I cannot do this while I'm consuming these narcotics like this because it's killing me. So yeah, it took several rock bottoms, and I got into some legal issues because I was not working and I was selling my pills. That wound up becoming, a friend of mine, quote, friend of mine, somebody I saw all the time, had gotten in trouble for writing a fake script or something. And I had sold him a few pills, literally like 6 pills. And I got a 20-year sentence for that.
Damn.
You can validate that. I will give you the information to look that up. But I got charged with 4 felonies, and I have no recollection of doing them. I was so high that I literally cannot tell you how it happened. But basically somebody recorded buying some pills from me, and that landed me a charge, pretty hefty, what they call distribution charge. And I kind of hid out for a few years, but when I was really fed up and decided that I wanted change and wanted to put in the work to make change in my life, I actually saw jail as an opportunity, and I turned myself in. I literally walked in and turned myself in with the help of my loving brother, Seth. He really helped me a lot. And there was not, I didn't want to do that. It was just something I had to do. And the way I describe it is it felt like something was just telling me it's going to be all right. Yes, this is going to be hard, but I got you. And I don't really, God is the way we put it, but something deep inside me gave me the courage and strength to turn myself in to the police and go through withdrawal cold turkey.
And so how long were you in there for?
In total, I did just under 2 years. They gave me, I got a 20-year sentence with a 1-year judicial review. What that means is you are going to be in DOC custody for 20 years, and you're going to go in for 1 year, and then you're going to come back to court. And if you do not get in any trouble and you spent your time well, then we'll let you out. And a comment on that is such a trap, because inside in prison, there's people there's truly bad people. Most of them are not bad people, but there's people who want to mess you up. They know you're on a review. They want to get you to fight, or something to get you what they call a write-up, which is getting in trouble, in jail, in prison. The initial detox, I was sick and in the drunk tank on, quote, medical supervision for about 3 months. And that's in a 7-by-10 cell with a bunch of other people, 24 hours a day for 3 months. And after about 3 months, I started to feel like myself again. And the way I describe it is when a child is forming in the womb, they go through something called transient exuberance. And what that is all the neurons in the brain just turn on like a light switch, and they become conscious, if you will. And the way I describe going through withdrawal is similar to how I understand a baby going through that. Is you just wake up and you feel emotions again. You feel, because, keep in mind, I'd been numb, literally numb for years. And the little bit of emotions I felt were amplified because just like feeling them for the first time again.
Yeah, because the entire time for the 3 months, you weren't obviously using anything. So it's crazy to realize it basically took about 3 months of not using before the effects and everything worn off.
Yeah. So for somebody, the initial withdrawal started about 3-4 days into not having anything. So I went from using heavily to nothing. And about 3 months until I was in a state that they could put me in what they call general population, which is a big open room as opposed to the drunk tank for, quote, medical supervision. 3 months of actually being sick. And then the rest of that time was my body adapting, just getting back to normal homeostasis. Pain was intense, but it wasn't unbearable. I had told myself all those years that I just cannot function without these medicines because I'm in so much pain, and it just wasn't the case. After the initial detox, it took several more months for me to regulate my emotions. Things were so intense and so just uncontrollable emotionally that it took time for my brain to regulate and let those juices and chemicals get back to a normal situation, because the drugs screwed all those chemicals up.
So how are you able to change your mindset? Because the big thing too is, all the people you associated with, you can't hang out with people like that anymore.
No, that's absolutely. I mean, a lot of, and myself included, it's easy to lie to yourself, to you think, well, what am I going to do without my friends and this and that? But when you look at it with clear eyes, when you look at it with a clear head, you realize I don't have anything in common with those people except using drugs. They're not really my friends. They just want what I can get them, my prescriptions, or they want my connections to other people. And so when you're able to see it like that, you don't care that you lost those, quote, friends. And actually, I mean, to this day, I still, there's just some people who just don't get that, hey, I cannot have anything to do with you. It's not necessarily anything personal. It's just that you are a reflection of a time in my life that I just cannot be a part of. And whether they got straight or not. And I do have friends who got clean, and I will tell you, it is a beautiful, beautiful thing to see somebody go from complete scumbag to graduating college and being this person that they're supposed to be. That is a very beautiful thing. And I've been fortunate enough to see people that I've met post being out, other musicians. Because when I got out of prison, I was like, what am I going to do with myself? Do I go to school, or do I like follow my heart and do this thing? And so I started playing music again. I met awesome people, and a really good friend of mine who was in the first band I started playing with out of prison was a complete wreck, complete train wreck. And I knew it. But I loved the guy because I had a lot in common with him, but I kept my distance. And as of 2 days ago, he's been clean and sober for almost 2 years now. And I had never known him to not be a complete addict and alcoholic. So yeah, it's definitely a beautiful thing to see people change and actually change, but it's very sad to see those who don't and are still doing the same shit that they were doing 10 years ago. It's like a cycle that they just are stuck in. And I just happen to be one person who managed to break that cycle and can attest to that it's not only possible, but it's achievable to where you won't just be okay, that you will thrive. The best thing I ever did was turn myself in and get clean.
Man, I mean, it's amazing. I'm sure you think sometimes about it's like, what do you think would have happened if you've never gone through this? And this has really shaped and changed your life. It's like, maybe you had to go through all this so you're able to help other people, because otherwise, why are you still here? It's like 100,000 plus people are dying every single year. And because you've been there, you're able to help people in such an amazing way. Because, one of the things I even share with you, if I was going through recovery, most people I wouldn't want to listen to. But because you've been there, you've survived, you've been through all this shit, people are going to listen to you because you've been through all this.
Exactly.
You can help a lot of people, man.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you got to do it for yourself to begin with. You can't do it for your mom or your wife or whatever. You have to do it for yourself first. And in certain recovery groups like AA and NA, there is a step down the line to where you get to a point where you can help other people. And I feel like, me personally, the way I can do that is just by telling my story and walking the walk that I'm on now. That is something that I'm very passionate about and want to do. But you also can't go around waving some giant recovery flag and judging other people. Like nowadays, when I see somebody who is still stuck in that cycle from the past that I knew or didn't know, I just feel like really sad for them, and I want to let them know that you can have everything you want in life. You can have everything you need, but there's something that's holding you back, and you have to take just the smallest step. It's just a step-by-step thing, and I think that's why something like 12 steps, which I think is great, and I've been to hundreds and hundreds of meetings, if not thousands, but everybody is so unique that it's astonishing. And that's something I wanted to address too, is that you cannot, while somebody else, let me rephrase this. So I always thought that to tell my story and it to have any impact, I needed to be a super successful, famous artist. That is what I believed initially. Like, who's going to give a damn if I just, I'm able to get by and, have a pretty cool life, but I'm not super mega famous and popular. So who's going to care? But I came to the realization that is a distorted way to look at it. I was comparing myself to other people. And when I realized when I learned how astonishingly unique each and every individual is, then trying to look at somebody else and put any type of comparison is just ridiculous. So the best way I know how to help anyone is just to share, just to share and be compassionate and non-judgmental. I had a hard time dealing with people addicted to other substances like methamphetamines or alcohol, because I didn't feel like I related to them much. It was basically a different style of addict, and I felt my style was, that was part of the addiction. I romanticized the opiates, Kurt Cobain, Lane Staley, William S. Burroughs, all these famous writers and musicians are using opiates, and it's this romantic notion. It's all a giant lie. It is a giant facade that is there to destroy lives. And again, I was comparing myself to other people, but so I not judging. When I quickly learned that I actually have a lot more in common with a meth addict or an alcoholic. It's just a different style.
Yeah, well, the big thing too is like anybody who's going through anything in life, they want to be able to talk to somebody who's just a regular human being.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you're not super famous, but you're a regular guy. I'm a regular person. You have some guy, maybe he fell off the ladder. He's a painter and he broke his leg and his doctors is giving him a bunch of medication. He wants to listen to somebody like you. Most people are just regular people. They want to be able to talk to somebody who's like them, and that's who you are. You can help a lot more people just being yourself than being some famous person. Because unless you're like, if I was super famous, I might want to listen to other famous people, but most people are not famous, Right. And you're just being yourself. You're being authentic and you're passionate. People love you. You're a regular person that we can all relate to, which is amazing. So don't change. Just be you.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much, and vice versa. That I just think that that's very dangerous and very toxic to look at somebody else and think, oh, I can't this because I'm not that. That makes no sense, but we do it all the time. Instagram, Facebook, star culture, whatever. So yeah, that coming, like when it kind of dawned on me through my just progress just constantly, trying to help myself and be a better person and be the person, not to be too cliche about it, but be the best me I can be. And one of the quotes that I use a lot, I think I made it up, but maybe not, was, I seek to inspire the way I've been inspired. And that's all I really want to do. Everything else doesn't matter that much. I play music and I interview famous people and write articles and I, do, all those things don't matter. That's not who I am. That's what I do, not who I am. So Yeah, absolutely. Being able to just be like, and that's why I was saying on, I I'm not here to sell anything. I'm not a CEO of some company or, whatever, whatever you see. A lot of times you see this self-help stuff and people are just like ultra famous and ultra rich and all that. I am so rich. I am spiritually, psychologically rich and emotionally rich, and that is the rich that matters.
I
The
love it.
material rich, that does not matter. Material rich does not matter at all. It's the that's what being rich to me is truly all about. And since being in recovery, I have, I had to grow emotionally too, because there were things that most people deal with in their 20s about their childhood that I never dealt with because I had numbed myself so much and been around other tragedy and stuff that I never dealt with, adolescent stuff. You know what I mean by like when you're growing up, like you kind of got to come to terms with your upbringing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, one thing I was just thinking about now too, because I think sometimes people might think about this. Well, I could use anything and I'll never get addicted. I could drink as much as I want. Do you think there's a certain personality where people are more likely to get addicted? Like with your background, do you think any of that might have had a role in being able to be addicted to it easier or any of that kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah, I actually think that there were certain things in place pre me getting injured that very potentially could have caused addiction. I come from a military family that's broken, a divorced home, very ugly divorce. And a lot of times people, suffer. I was very young at the time and the oldest of three boys, so it caused some damage to me. But I'm not sure that was enough to like make me get to the point I was putting a needle in my arm. But I think I could definitely have handled and resolved those childhood issues much better. However, I will say that I don't think I'm not sure that you're just born with addiction. Alcoholism is in genetics and stuff, but I'm the type of person that I know that there are certain things I cannot touch because if I do, it's like a domino effect. It opens up this door in my mind. So, for example, you go to the dentist and you need a tooth pulled and they give you Loratab or Percocet. Normal people could take those for however long and the pain would be gone and they move on. What would happen to me is it opens up a door in your mind where you're like, you know what, you were able to do that for a week and everything's fine still. Maybe you could do it again over here. And then it just rolls downhill. But at the same time, I can drink a half a glass of wine at dinner and completely like have, in fact, I just don't like alcohol. My fiance, she drinks. She's not an alcoholic, but her dad was. And she recognizes that she could potentially be an alcoholic if she let it. But she's very cautious of that. And I feel like a lot of that has to do with maturity as well, and just through knowing what I'd been through, knowing her dad was an alcoholic. But I know for me, there's just certain things I cannot partake in, but there are other things that just aren't an issue. So I don't know. Some people are very. I like Russell Brand, and he's very abstinence based. I mean, 100% abstinence from chocolate, from any kind of substance whatsoever. But someone like myself, I think there's some gray area in there. It's not necessarily all or nothing with every addict, because again, people are astonishingly unique, and their chemistry and their psychology is very unique, and their experiences, their life experiences. So all of those things have a play in it.
Thank you for sharing that, because yeah, it's interesting, because it seems like there are some people, maybe they try something once and dang, they're addicted to it. And sometimes, people just don't always know. Maybe you have somebody in your family who's addicted to alcohol, so you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to drink. But like, how do you think you were able to discover, like you were saying, like if you go to a dentist, if you take this is going to affect you, and it's something that you're going to like using, all that kind of stuff. Maybe there's somebody who's listened to this, and what are some good things that you think they should know, just in case, okay, well, if you feel this way or whatever, maybe you should stay away from this stuff. Like, maybe if someone's listened to this episode and they're 18, 19 years old and they're not even aware about any of this stuff, what are some good signs that they should be aware of?
I would say first, being honest with yourself is a giant thing, because many of us lie to ourselves, and it's like they say, it's the worst person you can lie to. So being honest with yourself about it in the first place would be very top of the list. And if you think that you're struggling with something, if you think that you might have an issue with a substance, the best thing you could do is talk to somebody who knows about it. And the first thing that might come to your mind is, well, I don't know anybody. How do I find anybody? I promise you, there are people in your life that you don't even know have had addiction problems. They don't broadcast it and just talk about it, but if somebody felt like they might be struggling with a certain substance, whether it be Adderall, that's pretty big in college right now, or oxycodone or alcohol or whatever, I would say the most important thing you could do is talk to somebody. There's help everywhere, and you don't have to make a big deal about it. You can just find your local AA or NA meeting. You can find any kind of substance abuse. You could Google local substance abuse and just open your mouth and say, this is what I'm thinking might be a problem. And that is essentially the first step. You admit it to yourself. But if you're just not sure and you're toying with it, you should talk to somebody about it. However, I will say, if you think that it might be a problem, there's a more likely chance that it is.
That's definitely the truth. So maybe you have somebody who listen to this, and it's like, being young, you're so worried about what everybody thinks, and it's like, literally, they're scared shitless. They know they need to get help, but they're scared to go get help. Even though if they went somewhere, got the help, they realize, wow, dang, this wasn't actually so hard. All I had to do is go here. What are some things that you think a person could do is like to overcome that, like actually walking into a AA meeting to get help?
Well, set the tone for that. Your human being's number one enemy is fear. Fear of any kind is the number one enemy. You can trace back in your thoughts any kind of missed opportunity or whatever to a fear. So first of all, fear, the first thing is not giving in to fear. Give in to love. Give in to, I love myself and my family enough to address what's going on. in me and with whatever substance I'm dealing with. And yes, it takes some courage and it takes some effort. But just like you said, once you do it, once you admit to, yourself and or somebody else that you think you might have a problem, it will feel like a lot of weight has been lifted off your shoulders. And again, it's very different. I cannot stress this enough. It's different for everyone. So one person's path and the way they got clean does not necessarily mean that that's going to be exactly how your path is. And I think that's very important to remember. But what I recommend personally is getting past the fear of admitting it to yourself and getting past the fear of talking about it with a professional, whether that be a professional who's licensed or a professional addict. And honestly, I recommend talking to somebody, finding somebody who's a professional addict as opposed to somebody, and a professional addict who has an enormous amount of clean time under them. So the guy or girl who's been clean for a year is not the person to talk to. You want to talk to somebody who's been clean for 5, 10, 15, 40 years. Because those are the people who are going to be honest with you. They're going to tell you the exact steps to make. I mentioned a friend of mine who I watched get clean through my time of knowing him, and he helps alcoholics in a very methodical way. Okay, first you're going to go through detox, and he will step by step, this is what's going to happen. And if you are literally full-blown addicted to something, you're probably aware that you're going to have to detox. But what I can say is, yes, it's going to suck. Yes, you're going to feel like hell, but that is short term. What you're going for is the long-term results and goal, which is living your life how you're supposed to live it and how you want to live it. That's the end result, because being a drug addict is easy. Being an alcoholic is easy. The only thing you have to worry about is getting that substance in your body so you can go and pretend you're living. But you're not living. You're just maintaining an addiction. So I definitely encourage and emphasize talking to somebody, even if it's just saying, hey, I think I might have an issue with this. This is what I'm doing. This is how I feel. So first step, that's definitely what I would do. And be open-minded too. I was very arrogant because I tried to get clean several times before prison, but you cannot do it by yourself. That's something else that needs to be known, is you have to have help. It takes a team, and it takes friendships, trust, and community with your other people in recovery. And I'll tell you, the people in recovery are some of the most amazing individuals. My story may seem bad to some, but I've heard stories that will just blow your mind. And being able to listen to somebody else is very beneficial too. So I would just recommend getting involved, seek it out. I mean, if you want to get biblical, knock, and that door will be open if you just pursue it.
Yeah, one of the big things, and everybody does this, we have these fears. It's important to realize fears is really bullshit. It's just these stories that we make up. It's not true. A fear is not true. And the most important thing is to know, it's like there are a lot of people out there who want to help people, but you got to ask for it. You got to ask for it.
Showing up. I mean, that's half the battle in anything, is just showing up. I mean, a lot of people would be astonished with how far they can get with just showing up. I mean, you show up to your job every day. You show up to practice every day. You show up to Facebook every day. Think about where you'd be if you put that effort into, getting your life back, getting clean. If that's something that you're struggling with, just showing up to the place where you know that there's help.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, it's like the people in your family, brothers, sister, your friends that you had before, I'm sure like they're so happy to get back you again, the original Ty, the person you were before.
Without getting emotional about it, like me and my mother's relationship was pretty rocky. My whole family's relationship, they got to the point where I cannot have anything to do with you. And that, to a parent, I know that seems like, oh, I can never do that. But if my family would have enabled me and given me resources to get drugs and to help me destroy myself, I probably wouldn't be where I am. But because they got to the point where they just had to throw up their hands and say, you know what, I cannot have anything to do with you. That was loving. That was extremely loving of them to do that. And my mother, who, she was a single mother at a very early age while my dad was in the military traveling around the world, she had 3 boys on her hands, and she did her best, and she did a good job. But our relationship was very strained, very, very strained, and I didn't really have one with her anymore. And the best day, she said one of the best days of her life was when I went to jail. Like, not, oh, Ty got arrested. It was Ty walked in and turned himself in to jail because they knew. And I didn't have to prove it. I didn't have this notion like I had other times I tried to get clean of like, oh, I gotta like prove to them I'm clean. That was not in my mind. It was just get clean. And they just knew it. The people who love and care about you, they'll know if you're sincere in your efforts. And yeah, my mom visiting me in prison and picking me up from the courthouse, that's definitely, she holds that on a pretty high life experience. And it's kind of funny, it's ironic when you think, oh, your son goes to jail and you're like so happy, but she knew that I had went to jail, I wouldn't say I willingly went to jail, but I turned myself in because I wanted change, and I knew that was a tool, an avenue to get change. And it took time, but I would like to emphasize that is all the things that came, the fruits of life that came after prison and being in recovery, getting out of prison. I got a job 2 weeks out. I had no money. I had no license. Just right out of jail, I immediately started. And it's hard. And there needs to be better situations for people like myself. But the fruits of living clean they happen quicker than you think. They don't happen on your time. They happen on life's time. And I think a lot of times people are really quick to be like, oh, I'm clean now. Well, where's all these successes and all this? Well, I promise you, they are coming. And they just come when they're supposed to, not when you think they should.
Well, one of the biggest successes is you get to live, you get to be happy, you get to have relationships with family members and friends.
Exactly. And that's where true happiness lies. True happiness is in relationships with other human beings. And at the same time, ironically, it's the most difficult thing in the world. Relationships with other human beings is the core of happiness, but it's also one of the hardest things. And that's just one of life's great ironies, I think. But I think the benefits definitely outweigh any kind of struggle.
Yeah, man. How was your experience going to jail? If you don't mind sharing that with us.
Jail is, so there's levels of jail, and local jail is max security. It's max security because, most people are waiting to go to court. They may be in there for murder or, some grotesque child molestation, or they're in there for not paying speeding tickets or for a freaking weed charge, or like myself, a distribution. I'm not downplaying what my charge. I'm not downplaying that, but I can, from an insider view and somebody from Oklahoma, where prisons and churches are what thrives here, is that the system is definitely broken. And addiction is not a criminal issue. It is a mental health medical issue. And until we, on a mass scale, get to that mindset that addiction is a mental health issue, not a criminal one, then I think real change will happen. But jail itself is a very filthy place. It's dirty, it's filthy, and there's bad people in there, but there's really good people in there. Really, really good people. And everybody's going through something. And some of the most valuable lessons I learned in recovery and in life were in jail and prison. It's not a good place, but sometimes the worst places are where you get the best lessons. Jail and prison, there's people who need to be there, but the majority of people do not need to be there. We do not need the type of system that we have. It's you can easily look at the numbers and statistics, and I would like to emphasize that jail did not save my life.
Okay.
I have been in jail multiple times. The thing that saved my life was being so fed up with the kind of life I was living with. I had to learn to hate my addiction. I had to learn to hate it, because the addiction is there to kill you. That's all it's there to do. It's there to take everything from you. And I was more scared. I had been around death and terrible things, but I was more scared of becoming mediocre. The thing that terrified me the most was drugs causing me to just scoot by, function barely, and become a mediocre human being. That was terrifying to me. So I had to learn to hate the addiction. And what jail did was separate me from the life and the people that I was involved with. And that was incredibly, incredibly beneficial. Just, it's that time out, that time away. And, if it had only been 6 months, I don't think I would have been clean for this long. Six 6 months wouldn't have done it. I needed to be gone for a year and a half, 2 years. It was a tool used in my recovery, and it doesn't have to get there. If you're struggling with addiction to any kind of prescription or any kind of narcotic or alcohol, it does not have to get to the point where you have to go to prison to get straight, because some people don't get second and third chances, and that's terrible. And I feel incredibly fortunate and appreciative that I have been allowed those chances. And actually, I occasionally feel a little bit guilty. I got out, and a friend of mine recently is dead, an old friend. And I kind of started to feel some, I guess, survivor's guilt from that. It didn't last long because, I was real with myself and like, hey, you put in work to get where you are. So, I gave myself more credit, but I'm just saying it doesn't have to get to the point where you're going to jail or prison. But if that's what you need, so be it.
Yeah, you have to do something that works. As you were talking about the system, obviously the system is broken. People are going to jail for mental health issues. Doctors giving people prescriptions and all this kind of stuff who don't need them, or who doctors might be aware they're addicted to these things. What do you think is the way to fix this broken system?
Well, I will say that I don't claim to have all the answers on that, but I do have some insights. The doctor who was, quote, my best doctor during my drug times wound up charged with 36 felonies and responsible for a number of deaths. But because he was a doctor with enough money, he didn't spend a night in jail, not one night. The problem is that if you're poor, you don't have much money, and you have an addiction issue, yes, there is help, but you have to put in a little more effort than somebody who does have money and perhaps the means to get into, high-end recovery centers and whatnot. But the prison system itself is just greatly flawed. It's racist. It breeds. It's created to be a revolving door. It's not meant. They call it corrections, Department of Corrections. There is nothing corrective about it. Yes, there were volunteers who would come in and do NA meetings or CASA or Celebrate Recovery, all great programs, but access to those programs is very limited, very limited. Most of the time it's the inmates themselves who are organizing them and putting them on. Jails and prisons are designed to keep people down. When you get out and you have a felony, you have to get a driver's license. Well, you can't get a driver's license because if you have a drug charge, they revoke it. You have to go to this class. You have to pay a woman or pay a place to tell you have to take this class that costs so much money to get to this next step, to then go pay more money to get your license. You're just out of jail and prison. You don't have any kind of support system. There's no way you're going to get on your feet. It's just designed that way. I think the root cause is greed. I think lawmakers in the past did have some sort of, they wanted to do good, but I think the result of some of the laws that are in place has caused just absolute travesty for families who didn't deserve it. So yeah, I mean honestly, Johnny, like opening up that can of worms is really going to. I've been working on something actually because Oklahoma is just like it's a prison state. Like we have private prisons, and what a private prison means private prison gets paid money to function, and the more people that are in that prison, the more money they get. So what would your incentive be? It would be to put more people in prison. Now, granted, Oklahoma is making steps to try and fix this problem. It's just happening slowly, and it's happening with a lot of pushback from the people on top, because the people in Oklahoma overwhelmingly voted for Section 768. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that, but that was a recent bill that brought a lot of drug crimes down from felonies to misdemeanors. I mean, stupid stuff like weed, possession of weed, small, almost what I would call there's no victim except the person. You know, they're not hurting anyone else. They just had some weed, or they had some illegal pills. Yes, that's bad, and the person should address that. But I don't think it's the state's job to come in and throw 5, 10, 15, 20 years at that person.
Oh, exactly. That's a big problem. Obviously, some kid who's 19 years old smoking a joint shouldn't be getting the same amount of time as some guy who's selling pounds of cocaine. I mean, like, come on.
Right. Yeah. And that's happened, especially if you're black or just anything but white. Basically, you're in trouble for being anything but white. We're going to call it a drug charge, but the system is designed to keep minority people down. I mean, it's just, that's obvious and I think it's more obvious now than it ever has been. To a 19-year-old, a young kid who may be experimenting with something, my advice to them would be like, I get it. You want to try something for whatever reason, but I will tell you that it may not happen the first, second, third, or even fifth time, but after so many times of trying it, it's going to grab you, and it's going to grab you hard, and you'll spend your entire life trying to get out of its grips.
It's just not worth it
at all.
And the big thing too, I don't think people always realize, it doesn't just affect you as an individual. It affects your family, it affects your friends, and affects everybody that you know.
Yes, it does. I mean, lives are destroyed. And when you hear anybody say lives are destroyed by drugs, that kind of opens up a lot of different topics. But when you say lives are destroyed, you're exactly right. You're not just harming yourself. People care about you. And if anybody is listening and thinks nobody gives a fuck about me, nobody cares about me, I guarantee you that you're wrong. I guarantee you. And there's a good chance you may not have even met the person who really, really cares about you just yet. But most likely, there's somebody that cares about you. And if you're being honest with yourself, there is somebody who cares about you. And I hate to see anything bad happen to you.
If you don't mind me asking, how did this affect your relationship with your brothers?
Oh, man. So I have two real brothers and 2 stepbrothers, but collectively there's 5 of us. And the brothers, they also did the same thing that the rest of my family did, just threw their hands up. I can't do anything with you. You're a mess. And me being the oldest, I actually am kind of grateful that I'm the one who went through the hardcore addiction and the prison time, because I feel like my brothers have been able to see what the result of that is. So when they're faced with, whatever temptation of drug may be there, they might think of what I had been through, and it might give them some pause. And I'm actually positive that has been the case in a couple situations. And I have a brother who's been dealing with, he's thought he was an alcoholic for a long time, and he's finally coming to terms with it. I actually took him to his first meeting about 2 weeks ago. I introduced him to a friend of mine who is a recovering alcoholic, and that was a beautiful seeing my brother be able to finally admit to himself that he's got a problem, So while they've been completely supportive and proud of me, I think my experience has forced them to take a look at themselves and gives them pause when tempted with, anything that may come in their life.
I mean, it's great that you're able to support them. So now that you've gone through this, how's your relationships now with them?
It's fantastic. I mean, I got everything back and then some. When I went through everything and got straight, like the family rallied around me, like absolute support. And again, I could not have done it without them. Like even when they weren't physically there, they were there, And that is a testament to what family really is. And even true friends. But my family, I just kept thinking about like, man, I met so many people who either their family are complete drug addicts too, or they just don't have them, And I just think about how fortunate I am and was. And that's another aspect of recovery that I found to be so beneficial is gratitude. Like for the smallest things, being grateful can go so far. Like how can you get more if you don't appreciate what you have now? So I started living in I didn't have much. Gratitude is living with a sense of gratitude for even the smallest things opens your life up to having more. So the struggle is hard in recovery, but it's so worth it. It is worth your life. It is worth everything. And I recommend it. I encourage it. And I am a testament that it can be done. I've seen it all, and I promise you, it can be done.
Well, I'm sure you've also probably didn't realize this until now. It's like how much your family really, really does love and care about you.
Exactly. You take it for granted, You totally take it for granted until they're not there, or a situation like mine that they rally around you in such a way that it just builds you up and lifts you up. And I'm just very grateful for the family that I was born into. Not a old money, super wealthy family by any means, but again, that's not where richness lies. Like the love and courage and support was and is worth more than all the money in the world.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing. A lot of times we think money will really make you happy. And I'll be honest with you. I some past friends of mine who have money, and honestly, they're some of the most miserable people you ever meet in your life. Very miserable. It's like, how the heck can you be miserable? You have all this money. But the people around them, they're only their friend because they have money. It's just like, it's really, really sad that they allow that stuff to get to their head when it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, totally.
So we wanted to ask you, because I think this is important, for anybody who's listening to this episode right now who might be going through drug addiction, being addicted to alcohol, whatever it might be, what are some things that you think they should do that could help them? And then also another question is for anybody who's dealing with somebody who they love and care about, what are some things that you would recommend that they do to support that person? Which, one of the things is you said with your family is like, sometimes like, I love you, but you just got to be distant and not be around them.
Well, for the latter question, yeah, you absolutely, the way you love an addict is by saying, I am here for you when you want to help yourself and be healthy and do good things for yourself, but I will not enable you to destroy yourself. I will not encourage your destroying of yourself. I will not condone it. I will not support you destroying yourself in any way, shape, or form, whether it be money, giving you a ride to where just anything that contributes to your self-destruction. I'm not going to have a part of it. And to people that aren't addicted, and this was something hard with my family and my mom and all my family, just stop. Just stop. Why do you keep using these drugs? Just stop. You don't just stop. That's not how it works. It's a process. Again, it's like diabetes, for example. You have a sickness, an illness that has to be treated the same way that cancer is treated. So I think it's important for families, friends of loved ones to understand that. The person may choose to do the drug. They chose it the first time, but something made them feel like they needed to feel something different. They weren't getting something out of life where they needed it, but it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. If they're an addict and you love them, real love is patient and it's kind, and it just, you got to love the person and try to understand that they're sick. It's a sickness like cancer, and it needs to be treated that way.
Sometimes people do things and they don't really realize in doing it. So it's like enabling. It's like you have a child. I love my child. It's like, do you give him money and then he buy drugs? And they're buying drugs, but it's like my child. I gotta support my child. I have to do whatever I can do to support him. But they don't realize what they're doing is actually making it worse. So what are a few things that you might say that you shouldn't do as a parent? Because I think this is extremely important as well.
As a parent of an addict, I would say what you shouldn't do is enable them. And I've seen parents before that, if you don't have opiates, if you don't have any kind of heroin or your prescription, whatever, you get sick. You get physically sick, and it can be very violent and it's very uncomfortable. But getting them that thing that makes them not sick it's called enabling. But if you can't stand to see them sick, so you just give them money so they go and get fixed, that is keeping the cycle going. They need to know that you are not a source of, you're not going to help them get that thing. And my parents never did that, but I have seen it before. I've parents, I just can't stand to see them like this, so they give them money and they go get their shit. Well, that person's dead now. The person that I'm thinking about, whose parents loved them enough, which is not the right way to say it, but thought they were doing the right thing by giving them money to go get the drug they needed, is just keeping the cycle going. So what a parent should not do is encourage that cycle. What they should do is treat them as if they have cancer. They need help. They need to go get help, and not give them any type of resource that allows them to keep the cycle of addiction from repeating.
Thank you so much for sharing that with you, because it's like I've mentioned this to you as well. One of my best friends I grew up with, it's like right now his entire life he's consumed with drugs, and it's like this is real stuff. This affects people's life, and it's like people don't realize it's not just you who's affected. You are destroying, like my friend. I mean, he's literally destroying his mom's, his dad's, his sisters, my life in some way. It's like, you miss these people who they used to be. It's like, you gotta get help, man. You gotta get help. If you're listening to this, please, please, please get help and know that there are people who love and care about you. This is real shit, man. Real stuff.
It's unforgiving. It does not discriminate. You are not an exception. It will destroy you. And at the very worst, it will make you a completely mediocre individual.
Yeah. And doesn't matter if you're rich, poor, black, white, Asian, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't discriminate. For people who are listening who want to get help, or maybe somebody in your family, do you know some organizations where places that they can go and get help and get support? Because it's out there.
Yes, there are numerous places. You want to go somewhere local. I know it's hard. People with Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, and like myself, I was just, God, this thing, I don't want to be like them, but there's a reason that thing has lasted as long as it has, and has became, it doesn't promote itself. It's not a financial thing whatsoever. It's like an inclusive organization that is self-supporting of addicts and alcoholics. And I absolutely recommend seeking out just one of those meetings and just go to it. You don't have to talk. You don't have to say, hi, I'm such an addict. If you don't want to, you just go and listen and truly listen, But outside of that, there's national helplines. I would recommend that if you just right now need to talk to somebody, going to SAMHSA's Substance Abuse Mental Health Hotline. It's government, 1-800-662-HELP. 1-800-662-HELP. That's a start. If you just absolutely need to talk to somebody right now, that is a start. But I highly encourage seeking out local resources.
All right. Thank you so much. What are a few things that you would love for people to take away from this podcast episode, Ty?
The main thing is that there is hope and there is help. It seems like the longest, hardest road. And while it is hard, it is not impossible. There are stories. We always hear the negative. We hear the tragedies all day long, but we never hear the positive. That's one of the reasons that I did this, is because I wanted to let you know that if I can do it, my God, if I can do it, I promise you can too. No matter what it is you're hooked on, you can too. And for those that are dealing with loved ones that are addicted, just understand that they are ill in a very similar way to somebody with cancer, and treat them with love, respect, kindness, and as much understanding as you can muster up, and try not to judge them. Definitely do not enable them or support their destruction, but just understand that they're sick and they need help, and that help is out there.
Man, thank you so much for sharing your vulnerability and everything. I really, really appreciate it, Ty. So for anybody out there who's listening and they want to get in contact with you, find out about your music and film and videos and all that kind of stuff, and what you do, how can people reach out to you, Ty?
Yeah, so I play in a band called the Bourgeois. It's kind of alternative punk rock band. Probably would have done well in the 90s. I would, if you want to know what I do, go check out the band, the Bourgeois. It's got a weird spelling. It's Bourgeois. I played drums for that band. I played drums in Grammy Award-winning studios. I've been the touring drummer for Warner Brothers Records artists, Stardust and White Dwarfs. It's a facet of the Flaming Lips. I'm telling you, when I got clean, things started happening. Dreams started coming true. And also the truth of those dreams, what I thought they were and the reality of them were shown to me. I interview national artists that come through my town at the Tulsa Voice. And I recently just completed my first feature film edit and have ambitions for more of that. But my personal website is ohthefuture.com, and you can check out the bourgeoisband.com as well.
Thank you so very much for coming to Power Your Voice podcast, Ty. I really, really appreciate it. You have such an amazing story, and it's so great to see that, after being, get into addiction and stuff like that, you can truly live. Life is not over, man. You are a walking testament to that, man. Thank you so very much, man. I greatly appreciate you. You're an amazing guy. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for allowing me to share this with you and your listeners.
You're so welcome.
Johnny here. Thank you for listening to the Power of Your Voice podcast. I'd love to get your feedback on this episode and how it impacted you. If someone in your life could benefit from this episode, share it with them. Check out thepoweryourvoice.com to read show notes, leave a comment on the blog page, and to stay updated on all future episodes, subscribe to this podcast and leave a 5-star review. Thank you for your love and support.